Welcome to the Republican Professor this morning in California, but this afternoon in an undisclosed location in the mountain region somewhere in the United States. We have the amazing, stylish Jill Geary.
Hello. It's
Thanks
good to
for
be.
being here, Jill.
My pleasure. It's an honor.
Jill is probably the only communist in Morrison, Colorado. Is that fair to say? There might be one other person that's a communist in Morrison. I don't know. But, so you got to watch those towns, those mountain towns there. Actually, Morrison's not really a mountain town. What am I saying? It's right there. Do you know where Morrison is?
I don't.
Oh, my goodness. So you didn't get that joke. That joke fell flat. Oh, well.
It's a little town in Colorado. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little town in Colorado. It's what's famous in Morrison? Red Rocks. Do you know what Red Rocks is?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
Red Rocks is in Morrison. Um, Morrison is it's kind of like it's like a foothill town because it's like the first town you might see as you start to maybe flirt with the Rocky Mountains.
I
You're not
see.
quite fully in there yet, but you're not really on the plains. And you're very close to Denver. I mean, shoot, you're very close with no traffic. I don't know what traffic is like these days, but back in the day, back in my day, you used to be able to just get to Denver in 20 minutes from Morrison. So I don't know. I guess it depends on the time of day.
I just didn't realize the name of the town. I've been to Red Rock.
Yeah. Yeah. The amphitheater.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's famous. U2 made it famous because they played Under a Blood Red Sky there. I think that was the name of the concert. um their Boy album and their War album there, and that was back when they looked even sillier than they do now. But anyway, I'm going to quit talking. Hi, Jill.
Hello.
Jill, you have I don't know what you want to talk about today, but I thought I would just introduce you to Republican professor people as someone that knows what it's like to be kind of a minority voice or a minority presence, I guess, in terms of your values and the way you see the world and where you live. And you seem to be like the kind of person that likes to kind of create your own path and live your life freely and with love of all things God created. I don't know if I have that right, but I'm just, if this is the first time I've met you really, and I've followed you on Facebook for a long time, but where would you start your story? How would you start your story about how you see the world and what you deal with?
My story started about 3 decades ago as a
So
young
you're
Christian.
starting with conception? I guess that would make sense.
Thank you so much.
Your story started, yeah, that makes sense. God created you. I
Conception.
mean, don't picture it for crying out loud. It's your parents, but
As a young Christian, I was in a church that had a leadership culture, and I had mentors who really invested in me, built into me, and it formed a foundation. So a lot of my worldview is values that I gained decades ago and have continued to learn and grow to this present time in the culture that we are living in.
do you want to say the name of the church?
It was Willow Creek Community Church
I've heard of that church.
in South Barrington, Illinois.
Didn't they have a famous pastor or something?
They did.
Yeah.
That was Bill Hybels.
Bill
who
Hybels.
had a strong leadership gift. So the whole church had a culture of leadership.
Yeah.
It was my
Okay.
foundation.
Wow. So was it top down? Was it the leadership had it right and then everybody else kind of got on board, or was it organic,
It
bottom
was
up?
top down. It's like Napoleon Bonaparte when he said, if you take 100 lions and build an army and they are led by a dog, they will fight like dogs. But if you take 100 dogs and they are led by a lion, those lions will die like a dog. I said that wrong, but it's that Napoleon Bonaparte quote. Top down. Yes, everything rises and falls on leadership.
So you're giving a huge compliment to Bill Hybels now?
Well, that wasn't the intention at all of this talk, but
Well, it's
yes, I
okay because now I can
he's
sue
brilliant.
them. I can now
He
sue him and get money from him now because he owes me now. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm thinking like a Democrat.
was
Hold on, never
completely
mind.
not even
Let
on
me
my
let me
radar.
get re.
But
I'm sorry.
yes,
I'm throwing you off. I'm throwing you. Wasn't Lee Strobel there too?
he was. Lee Strobel had a brilliant mind
Mm-hmm. Still does, I think. He's still
and still
alive.
has just apologetics and a very logical mind.
I
So,
went to school with his son,
oh,
Kyle. Not that Kyle knows who I am or cares, but I do remember him, seeing him around. I chat with him every once in a while. But we graduated together. Our graduation thing, both of our names are on the same thing. I just remember seeing it. Just remember thinking about it. Yeah, Lee Strobel, his book played a key influence in my life when I was in the Navy.
hmm,
It's called The Case for Christ, I believe it was called Case for Christ. Um, he interviewed some scholars, at least two of whom, maybe it was more than that, I ended up studying with as a student. Craig Blomberg has two chapters in that, and he was my thesis advisor at Denver Seminary. And JP Moreland was one. In fact, I had JP on the podcast. So um yeah. Yeah, big deal. Well, when you say leadership, what do you mean by that term?
I like John Maxwell's definition, which leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. It's not about title or position. Ultimately, that would be the lowest form of leadership, but it's about influence.
Okay.
That is how I would define it.
So
How would you define it?
just on that, well, just on that um way of looking at leadership, it could be good or bad. It's not necessarily a good thing.
That is true.
Well, when I think of leadership, I think of just it's a relationship between people. And I might have this wrong, Jill, so feel free to push back on this, but I think of it as a relationship among people where if you're going to be a leader, you have to have followers.
Right.
Because otherwise, so not everybody can be a leader. So, I mean, it doesn't make any sense for that to happen. So it seems like you always have to add more to it. What leadership? It can't just
Right.
be leadership. It has to be something else.
Yeah. Not everyone can be a leader, but no matter where anyone is, in whatever realm they're in, they can increase their own personal leadership. They can increase their ability to influence.
Right. Okay. But there's got to be a purpose, though, right? There's got to be some kind of um, goal, right? What are you influencing for? And do you think of that as part of leadership or?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
For example, if we look at culture, we look at what I would call the seven mountains. We look at the parts
What
of
do you mean
society.
by seven mountains? So people know what that is. I know I know what you're talking about, but some people might not
And
know.
what I mean by seven mountains is seven areas in the world that influence and really shape society, such as academia, media, arts and entertainment, business. There are seven of them, and they're influential spheres. And so it's fascinating to me to look at those spheres and see who are the leaders. And as you said, some good, some not, or some may, and maybe that's not the right term, some align with my values, some don't. And is there a strategy for those spheres so that we can influence not only our nation, but the entire world? That's what's fascinating to me.
What are those seven mountains? Can you list them off?
Yeah, the seven mountains are religion, family, education, government, arts and entertainment, and business.
Okay. And are those are just let's see. Those are what you're saying is when you look at the world, you see about seven different areas that impact human life. Is that kind of where you're going? And
Absolutely.
you call them seven mountains?
I'm calling them mountains. You can call them spheres of influence.
Right. Okay.
They're drivers. So we look at
Yeah.
media,
Okay.
and when media shifted in terms of instead of reporting facts, I and many others noticed we weren't getting facts. We ourselves became the news.
Is media under arts and entertainment?
Arts and entertainment is different. Arts and entertainment would be a movie like 13 Hours, that story of Benghazi. That was a
Okay.
film produced that
Where's media then?
message
Hold
to
on.
mainstream.
You got academics, religion, family, education, government, arts, business. Where's media?
Media is another. Media, which would be the news.
Would that be an eighth mountain then?
No, there's seven. Religion,
Okay.
family, education or academia,
Mhm.
government,
Yeah.
media, arts and entertainment.
Oh,
That's one.
okay. Hold on. Academics. Maybe you know what? I think I put academics as the academics should be in education.
Same,
Okay.
right?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I had media. I wasn't sure where to put media. Okay. So you got media, which is the news, religion, family, education, government, arts, entertainment, and business. That's seven.
Right.
Okay. All
That's
right. Got it. Okay. So you were saying about media, there's a corruption going on with media. I think
there
pretty much
is.
everybody can see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
And
a
so
lot of kids are like just totally bewildered
I know.
right now.
And so it's not a reliable source as
Mm,
it should be.
yeah.
I mean, it should be a reliable source where we're getting
Right.
facts and we can make a decision on our own, not a preconceived agenda that's being driven.
I have no idea how old you are, but you look fairly young to me. But I think you might be old enough to remember what it was like to read the newspaper. Did you ever read the newspaper growing up?
That is what we did. We read the newspaper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was even more powerful than the news, the nightly news, I think. I think the newspaper, there was something about having a newspaper.
In the
You
morning.
yeah, that's right. You had it in the morning and you had your coffee and you'd see the front page first. And I think of y- yeah, I think of these films about that old school journalism. There's a
Yeah.
film called Spotlight, which has it has uh Michael Keaton in it, and it's just the old school journalism. I love it. It's about the Boston Globe, And then there's another film he was in, also Michael Keaton, it's called The Paper. And The Paper came out in 1994. And what's interesting about that film is it's right on the cusp of the end of this whole era, because the internet wasn't a big deal in 1994 yet.
Right, right.
And so people still read the newspaper quite heavily, and they did even when the internet was even several years into the internet, I think. But the paper is a story about the old school journalism where you tried to get the story, and there was always this tension between selling papers, because you got to sell the ads, and that means you have to have eyeballs, and
Mm-hmm.
that means you have to have a sensationalist and you know temptation there sometimes.
Right,
You want the juicy story, you don't just want bare facts that are boring.
right, right.
So with the internet, I think the internet changed all that, because we've kind of grouped into tribes, and the tribes um, are more obvious in their bias. The newspapers were always biased, they always were, but it
Mm,
was much harder to tell, and they at least would be embarrassed if you pointed it out. I mean, they tried not to be. I really
mm,
do believe they tried.
mm-hmm.
And there was um but the way it's developed now is, it seems like people curate their own news sources around what they already agree with, and then the bias is sort of celebrated, I think. And just look at the New York Times. The New York Times is a perfect example of this, where they
Mm-hmm.
don't have any Republicans that are reporters, that are, or major editors, and they think that's perfectly fine. They think, oh yeah, what could be wrong with that? It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
never even occurs to them. The
Mm,
Washington Post has never endorsed a Republican candidate for president, ever.
mm.
That,
And
that's just an accident, I guess. But
house, and
how can
instead,
that be good? How can that be a good thing?
it's not a good thing. But instead of fighting the old, trying to transform the Wall Street Journal, I would rather see a new one emerge at
Hmm.
this point.
I think a lot of people are on board with that.
Change them.
But say then what happens is, you don't really have a common language. You don't have a common thing to talk about. Like, you've got your facts, I've got my facts, and I'm not reading what you're reading, you're not reading what I'm reading. And
Mm-hmm.
because there's a low attention span, um, or limited attention span, it seems like it's getting shorter and shorter.
Sure.
Um,
I
then I
guess
don't want to listen to what you're saying. Say it
part of it,
again.
when I look at something like the Wall Street Journal that's biased toward one side, then we become the voice. A counter message needs to be presented somewhere, even if it's not in their paper. Then it's online, then it's on different platforms. But a counter message needs to be brought by the people that have a voice that cuts through the fog and goes straight to the heart of the matter.
Right.
You're one of those people. I'm one of those people.
Me? You?
Sure.
Yeah. How do you do it? What's that look like in your life?
What that looks like is using social media at times, although not overtly, because I can be banned. I'm on
Yeah,
platforms that's not
because
that's not
the
the
because the
pop
Democrats run the social media.
social
Let's just
media,
be clear about that.
my circle of influence, whatever doors open up.
We had a video taken down early on from YouTube. It was Brad Cummings.
Mm,
Brad Cummings. He was the publisher of The Shack.
ah,
Um, it
yeah.
it sold. He said it sold 22 copies out of his garage, and I was like, "That's it." And I guess I forgot. I didn't hear part of it cut out. he said 22 million copies out of his garage. I was like, oh, okay, that's why it's a big deal. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I'm doing the math. 10 cents a copy. No, it's
Hmm.
actually more than that. But and then he produced the film, The Shack, which
Hmm.
grossed about $100 million, and was on. I said, yeah, but what was the budget, Brad? 200 million? Was this a Top Gun budget here? And he said, no, it was about 20 million.
Mm.
So we talked for 30, we talked for 30 minutes. We talked for almost 3 hours. And in that time, I cannot say the words that he used because that's what got him banned, the video
Oh,
taken down.
wow.
I cannot say the word on this, but it had something to do with a crime that starts with an F, and has to do with pretending to be something you're not, or passing something off as legitimate that's not.
Uh-huh.
And it had to do with a recent major thing that happened in American politics that affected the entire country. Anyway, he expressed his entire his view on that, and the words were EF, uh, and yeah, it was taken down, and he only said it twice in 3 hours, and that wasn't even the focus of the interview, and he was just expressing his personal opinion. And they took it down, and they said it was misinformation about a specific national thing, official thing. So anyway, they only did that because they wanted us to know who's really in charge here on YouTube, and you got certain boundaries you can't cross. And they ended up putting it back up after I pointed out the logical incoherence of what they said, which again I can't even talk about on this because as soon as I say the words, they'll take it down, and then there's no discourse, there's no dialogue. So that's what's frustrating to me, Jill, is the lack of discourse and dialogue, the lack of free speech.
Hmm.
And there's so many um, boundaries in the way of us dialoguing like normal adults. When you say you can't disagree because I'll shut you up,
Hmm.
that doesn't help anything.
Exactly.
Do you ever feel like you're censored?
Absolutely.
Do you feel like you have to hold your tongue? And I don't mean just like being a mature adult where you don't say something that you're angry about or something. I mean, where you have something to say and it seems to you it's a legit thing, or you have a way to be and you think it's legit. Do you ever feel like you have to kind of cover that up?
I don't feel that I need to cover it up because I do have a voice, but I have learned to adapt. As you just spelled out a word and gave clues, we are smarter than the panther. I've learned to adapt and speak in code.
That's what they had to do in communist societies.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there you have it. So that is where we're standing.
Yeah,
It won't be
sure.
the finish. This is not the end chapter. And
It's also what they had to do in fascist societies, which
mm,
fascism is communism in with private companies. In other words, it's a mix of socialism on the government side with government favor of certain corporations that toe the government line, and the corporations are privately owned. And so as long as you're towing a certain party line, then you're okay.
right. And
And
that is
that's what we have now.
it's a battle and we're in
Yeah,
it.
that's right. That's
Hmm.
right. A lot of people think that fascism is on the right. That's not really what's going on. It depends on where you're talking about, because left right is a relationship, right? This,
Hmm.
this might be on the right, my right hand,
Hmm.
relative to this, right? And Now, if they're both over here though, and
Mm-hmm.
I say this is on the right, that this is on the left, and this is the whole spectrum,
Yes.
then it, really the fascists are, I think, on the left. They always have been. I think of the left-right spectrum as the police state is the left,
Mm-hmm.
and anything that is a police state or anything that looks like a police state where natural rights are not protected is on the left. And anything that's closer to the way God created it is not on the left. And I don't think God created the police state. I don't think he had anything to do with that kind of vision. But the Nazis were certainly police state people, and they were on the left. They were socialists.
Mm-hmm.
Socialists are not on. They're always on the left, and I think even the slave plantations were on the left. I know that people think this is insane but that's because they don't think about it. But the
Mm-hmm.
natural rights were not protected on the plantations. They were a police state.
Mm-hmm.
They were like a communist gulag. And it's no, I mean, the Soviet gulags, they use slave labor. It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's far left.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what you call it. That's just a fact. Bible says that the left hand is anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna not talk
Right.
about the Bible that much, but I wanted to get. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Talking too much. You have a background in business?
I have a mind for business. Yes, I have a background in business.
You know what?
I'm on a business mountain.
Yeah, okay. Jill, I think people are gonna look at you and think you're just rich. You just are sitting there and your dang mansion, and you are just rich. That's who you are. What animates you, Jill? What's your day like?
My day is I have a work that I do, and then outside of that, I have passions that drive me that are really what I was created to do, such as looking at our culture and what difference can I make to shift what's happening, because I don't want to live in a fascist state. I don't want to be censored.
Yeah, me
Somebody
too.
died and fought for my freedoms.
Mm,
That was not in vain.
yeah.
It's an abomination that would be thwarted in any way.
Are you around people that feel the same way you do?
I am.
You have a support system in place, a social support system?
I do. I have tremendous friends, and
Awesome.
that's who I bring into my inner circle.
Yeah. So um what practically are you doing to move the ball down the road then on your work and your passions and making sure the world is better? What I hear you saying is you want the world to be better than the way you left it.
That is true.
Yeah. Are you do you need to talk around things, use code, or
You know,
I understand if you do. I was on the Democrat campuses for a long time. Finally, I just started talking. And here I am. So,
I love the realm of ideas. So right now that's where I'm comfortable, in the realm of ideas. I look at a city like Seattle, for example, that has this company, Starbucks is headquartered there. Beautiful coffee.
I've heard of it.
But I would love to see a company like Black Rifle Coffee Company plant a flag in Seattle. They may or may not. That's just an idea that came to me when I did a little bit of research on Seattle and looked at the companies there, who is the CEO, who's headquartered there. It's companies like Amazon, Starbucks, Tommy Bahama. But I would love to see Republican companies like Black Rifle Coffee Company, for example, really plant a flag in those places that are being run differently. That's just one thought. But right now I'm in the idea realm, just strategizing, like a war room.
Oh, okay. Black Rifle Coffee Company, are you a customer? Do they have
It
one
was
of those in your town?
introduced to me. Honestly, I was looking into Seattle. It had nothing to do with coffee. I was looking into Seattle and just looked at the companies there, who are the CEOs, who's headquartered there, and that idea
Right.
just came to me. I don't know a lot about them except that they're veteran owned and operated.
Yeah.
And
They're also publicly traded now.
oh, lovely.
Well, I don't know. I'm suspicious of publicly traded companies.
Oh, are you?
Oh yeah. I don't think it's a when someone goes public, I don't think it's a great thing at all. I think
Mm,
I think that they had I don't mean to be too critical of this coffee company, but I don't know
mhm.
why they thought that was a good idea to go public.
Okay. Well, I don't know who is
But
advising them, but they did not speak to you,
well,
Lucas.
yeah,
They
I
on their
have a
board.
feeling I know who's advising them is the people that are making money when they go public. Um, it's fine to make money, but when you give up control of your company like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Interesting.
that's not a good thing. You know, generally speaking, it's not a good thing. I don't know why they needed the money. They felt like they needed the money, and it's a cool concept. I mean, I like the concept.
Mhm.
Um, but don't be surprised if Black Rifle Coffee Company starts doing stuff that you find odd.
Well, that's interesting.
They're going to have pressure now. They're going to have public pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, okay. So, but I've had the coffee and it's very good. Um, we've had Hunter's Blend coffee, to your point, which would be a coffee company that's a small Ohio-based coffee company in Ohio. Wow, that
Mm-hmm.
was redundant. um, and I've met the owners, and they were on the podcast, and it was we had a great time, and I've had their coffee too, and I think it's better than Black Rifle Company.
Awesome.
But it's
Well,
privately held. It's a closely held company, and it's a Christian
mhm.
company, and it has they have very close ties to the people that grow the coffee, and I love that. So um, but why are you talking about Seattle? Are you in Seattle? Because you were just talking about Bill Hybels' church in Chicago, right? Isn't that Chicago? Are you still
I,
in Chicago? You got a little bit of a Chicago accent.
yes, I grew up in the Chicago area. I've lived in Dallas, in Atlanta. I'm in Colorado now. Um, and Seattle was just on my mind for a future date. I was just doing a little bit of research.
Are you thinking about moving there?
Not anytime soon.
Okay.
I have some commitments here.
I grew up in Colorado.
That's right. I knew that.
Yeah.
Beautiful
I'm a
state.
Colorado boy. I'm a Colorado native. That's how I would
Awesome.
put it, which means that you know what that means, Jill?
What does that mean?
Well, Colorado's in America. And if I'm
Yeah,
native to Colorado, then that means that I'm native to America.
that is true.
And that means that I'm Native American.
Oh my,
So, I mean, it's just simple logic. Where else would I be native to?
absolutely.
Um, so you want to go back to the seven mountains thing?
Sure.
Okay. What else did you want to talk about with the seven mountains? We talked a little bit about media. What about religion? Want to just go through?
Sure. I don't know that I have a strategy for that. Nothing comes to my mind for that particular mountain
Okay.
for some reason.
All right. Family?
That just starts at the home. I mean, that's individual.
Right. So why is it a mountain then?
Because if that value is lost, I believe that that would change the face of the world, if as a value.
But how can, when you think of leadership, you're talking about leadership, right? The Seven Mountains thing is a leadership thing, right?
Well,
So how can people be a leader? What's
I'm
that?
looking at the seven mountains through the lens of leadership.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So that would be a really small circle of influence, is just everybody in their own family. Are you
you
saying there's a way that
know,
families should be?
if it is a small little area that doesn't have a lot of impact, then why is it so attacked
Hmm.
by things we see in media or what's going on in academia? It feels like it's under attack.
Well, you know what they'll say, Jill? They'll say, the folks, the Democrats will say, we're not attacking the family. We think that the idea of family should be expanded to cover things that you don't think are family. But then Jill, you are being very intolerant and bigoted and phobic, and you have they don't seem to know what phobic means. It means fear. Um, so they will exhibit phobic behavior themselves, and they will be afraid of you for being phobic, which is the most ironic thing in the world. But not that self-awareness is on their, their strong suit on this. But but that's what they'll say. And they'll just call you names. They'll say you're a phobic person and get away from me, you phobic person. I'm afraid of you. And they'll say you're hateful, Jill, because you don't like, well, what is it that you don't like? What's the attack, I guess? Is it divorce? Is it, what is it that you're worried about? Is it the women working outside the home? I bet
Is
you're worried about women working outside the home, Jill. That's really, you just want people that you, I was accused of this all the time when I was a kid. You just want women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I was like 16 when people were telling me this. I was a little Republican. It was like a thought that I never had in my mind. They were putting in my mind, and you know, they they weren't listening to what I was saying. They were just, so anyway.
so, children, there's an influence on our children. This really moves into the academic mountain, but
Mhm.
it's just what's being shaped. This is again not those the two mountains you picked, the first two are the two I've probably spent the least amount of time on, but
Okay.
mountain, it's a value, it shapes society. If that corrodes and is lost, we lose the next generation.
By family, you mean biological kinship, mother, father, children, grandfather, grandmother, children, grandchildren? Is that what you mean by family? Cousins? Or do you mean boyfriend, girlfriend living together, shacking up? That's what they used to call it. Is shacking up family, Jill? I'm just having a hard time grabbing this. Babies outside of marriage, once they get sick of having abortions. Um, what do you mean by family? I mean, you really got to spell it out because people
True.
don't know. I mean, if you're, if you want to be a leader on this, you have to be clear about what you're leading on. And is this like a Dr. Dobson thing? Do you think he was a good leader on this? Do you know who Dr. Dobson is?
I do.
Okay. When I think of family, I think of focus on the family. Was he a leader on that mountain? Would you say that?
I would say he was a voice on that mountain.
Okay.
He was a leader if he had people following him. You know,
Bill Clinton had people following him too, though.
yes, he did. That Yes, he did.
But all of a sudden, we're supposed to be really upset at Donald Trump. The same people are upset at Donald Trump. Amazing. Anyway, sorry. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
just said the T word. Probably going to be taken down now.
Mm.
No, it won't. It won't be taken down because they don't. They won't be able to tell if I was saying it in a good way or bad way.
This is true.
Well, how about this? How about we go to government? What about government? Or did I cut you off? Sorry,
No, no,
Jill.
not at all. No,
Okay.
not at all. Government, you know, I look at history, Black Hawk Down, or what
Mhm.
happened in Afghanistan.
Yeah, big time.
We were there not just to fight, but also to transform. That is that mountain at its finest. We as a government went in, that unit of our government, which was our armed forces, went into Somalia with Black Hawk Down. And that's a whole story. We went into Afghanistan and not only fought the bad guys, that was the mission, but also had Afghanistan's fighting side by side with our Navy SEALs to really transform that culture so that they could do it on their own. We didn't want to have to keep going back. We wanted them to be independent and they could handle it themselves against warlord leaders that were threatening their way of life. So that's the government mountain, one sector of it. It's also who is leading the country, but it's big. It's a big one.
I'm gonna channel my inner Democrat, Jill.
Okay.
Does that mean so when the first thing you thought of with government was invading another country, does that mean that that's our job is to just go invade other countries and intervene everywhere? And like, for example, should we intervene in Ukraine? No. Should we invade Syria or Libya, or should we defend Taiwan
We
against
should defend
communist
Taiwan.
China?
We should defend Taiwan.
Okay. It's going to be a lot of fighting over there. And if there are nuclear weapons involved, they'll be fighting over here. And it's going to be quick and going to be fast. Um, so that's a lot of fighting. Um, a lot of blood, a lot of treasure spent. And I'm going to channel my inner Democrat. I'm still channeling my inner Democrat. Okay, Joel.
That's all right. And you know,
I'm
it's
happy. I'm happy with the way we left Afghanistan, Jill, because this is my inner Democrat. Um, we are just going to give them a gift, and because, well, they're minorities. First of all, you got to make sure you know that. But also, just we're just getting. We don't really have a plan, Jill. Okay, all right. We want to defend Ukraine. Okay, we're sick of Afghanistan. Now we're going to go to nuclear war with Ukraine. It's very complicated, Jill.
it's basic economics. It's Thomas Sowell. It's we have limited resources.
Yeah.
We determine where we go. So we may
So how
not go
can we?
anywhere
Yeah.
and fight, but these are our resources. This strategically makes sense. We have people that make those decisions. We want the right leader in place that's commander in chief so that our resources are being used wisely to protect. We're all interconnected at some point. We're also protecting ourselves, but we're helping.
Yeah.
It's making decisions based on economics. Where
Well,
is it wise to use our resources to come along as an ally when it's a good decision to do that?
Yeah. So that would be philosophy plus economics, because the wisdom piece has to be guiding the pure economics part. I think the
Yes.
pure economics is just looking at incentives and trade-offs and stuff like that. Um, but in terms of thinking about whether it's wise or prudent, that would
Mhm.
be getting into the philosophy. And now, in terms of government, though, what about the stuff here at home? Like, what, a lot of people thought that Afghanistan was a lost cause, including Donald Trump.
Mhm.
He wanted to wind things down there. I don't think he would have done it the way that the current president did.
Mhm.
I don't think that the current president, Kamala Harris, did it very well.
Right. We certainly don't want to lose billions of dollars in weapons and leave
Right.
them behind and leave our Marines behind.
Yeah.
That would,
Yeah, I don't know how Donald Trump would have done it, so it's hard to know the comparison, but
right.
um in fact, the last episode that we posted for the Navy's birthday yesterday was a Navy SEAL who was in Operation K-Bar. He was one of the first people in Afghanistan. When I
Mhm.
asked him, Master Chief Larry Wilski, plank owner of SEAL Team 7, whether he agreed with what Joe Biden did, if he had any commentary on that, getting people out of Afghanistan, his whole demeanor was icy, and
Mhm.
he was very bothered by it. But if you listen to Republican podcasts on it, like, for example, Dan Crenshaw, who's a Navy SEAL, is a Republican congressman. He had some things to say about Afghanistan withdrawal, and he doesn't agree with how we did it, but he seems to be sympathetic with the idea that we had to get out,
Mm.
and because it was not we were not going to transform the culture there. The culture is
Mhm.
so ancient and so embedded there. And a lot of it
Mhm.
has to do with the geography as well. It's just a really
Mhm.
tough place. It's an extremely harsh place. It's hard to put your mind on how isolated Afghanistan is. And
Sure.
just that the logistics of getting things in there and out of there was kind of a nightmare. And now, anyway, I mean, we've lost all our intelligence assets on the ground as far as, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but we've lost a lot of our major intelligence capabilities there. But it was costing a lot of money. So, um,
Sure. I
yeah,
listened to your podcast yesterday and I liked his answer. It was maybe there's information that we don't have access to in
that's what
terms
he
of
said. That's what,
perhaps they exited in a different way than what
sure.
was presented to us.
Yeah.
We doubt
Sure.
it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
perhaps. So maybe
Yeah.
it's classified
Sure. I mean,
information that
it's
we don't
possible.
know. But from what we saw, yes, that was
It's possible that there is a better reason that is unknown to the wider public. That's true. And that's what he said. And I agree with him.
mhm.
Um, yeah. But what about here at home as far as the government goes? What are your main concerns about the government here at home?
Well, there are a lot of concerns about here at home and the government. Voting
Oh,
integrity.
you said the V word.
Oh, can I not?
Um,
Could have gotten
no,
a list
it's fine.
of
It's fine. Just don't say anything else. Just
got
don't
it.
say anything else. Yeah. Because, yeah, that's a specific one we have to talk around because, yeah,
Ah,
yeah, that stuff only goes on audio. I don't put that on video. So I
okay.
have two audios on it on the podcast on that topic. Yeah.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah. but that's getting into the weeds. Okay. So the issue of representation is a problem that you're identifying. How do you make your voice heard officially?
Mm-hmm.
There's problems there that need to be addressed, and they need to be able to be discussed openly without fear of censorship from
Mm-hmm.
private corporations that do whatever the political party in charge wants them to do. Okay, I agree with that. Anything else?
Mm.
I'll tell you what my concern is separation of powers.
Mm.
Separation of powers is constantly under attack. And generally speaking, the Democrats don't like separation of powers. And generally speaking, it's the Republicans that try to defend it. Generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but you have some people that are old school Democrats that want separation of powers, and then you have some Republicans that want to just be liked by Democrats, and they don't seem to like separation of powers at all. But I could give you examples of this um, in the Supreme Court jurisprudence and like the DC Circuit jurisprudence. There's cases that go through there that have to do with separation of powers, the structure of the administrative state. Is it under the president or is it not under the president? There's all these restrictions on who the president can hire and fire,
Mm.
especially firing. And I think Trump went in there thinking he could just fire people for being incompetent or being going against policy preferences of the voters. And he was in for a very rude awakening because the administrative state is actually a political entity for one major political party.
Mm.
And nominally, the president is in charge of the administrative state. It's in the bulk of the administrative state is in the executive branch. And according to the Constitution, which is Article 2, Section 1, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. It doesn't say in a branch that the president cannot fire. That's not what it says. It says the executive power shall be vested in a president, in one person. And as far as I can tell, Donald Trump read that and he said, that sounds great. I would like to be that person. He got there and he realized that the structure of the thing, as created by Congress and blessed by the courts over time, illegitimately, but
Mm.
uh, the average person is grade inflated and has a very low attention span, and you can't be grade inflated to have a low attention span and even come close to understanding this because it's
Mm.
taken place over decades and it's thousands of pages long. And but what's effectively happened is you have a decades long entrenched bureaucracies that is so huge. I don't think even the president knows how big it is until years into the presidency. I don't even, so, okay, let me give you from a Congress angle. Let me give you, I had Heidi St. John on here. She's running for Congress. You'll like this because she's a fireball and she's just a joy to be around. She's great. I love talking to her. And she was saying that we need a change in leadership, right? And in Congress. And I was playing um heaven's advocate with her. I don't think the devil needs any more lawyers. So I said, Heidi, what are you going to do? What's the first thing you're going to do? What are you up against? And she said, well, I'm going to, find out where the ladies' room is and stuff like that. And I said, oh, that's actually a very good answer. But I was really serious about pushing her. Like, okay, but what do you realize what you're up against? She's running from Washington State.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, hey, basic things. Let me key you into some basic things right away that you'll notice is you are already behind because you're in Washington State. I'm teaching a Congress class right now, my students. I'm trying to get them up to speed on some of this stuff. The major problem she'll face is travel.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a congressman from Virginia, you're just, a hop, skip, and a jump away. You're a bus ride away. You have thousands of pages to read, thousands. Are you really going to read that? Are you going to read what you're voting on? Are you going to trust your staff to read it? How are you going to get the good staff? Who are these people? Grade inflated kids from college? Are they going to read it? You're going to trust what they're going to say?
Mm.
The voters of Washington are going to trust people they didn't vote for, your staff. They're trusting you to hire good staff. Where are you going to find these people? And by the way, how much are you going to pay them? And how are you going to find good people for that amount that you're going to pay them? Because you don't have a lot to pay them. And how are you going to keep them accountable? How are you going to supervise their work? And you're telling me you're going to do this in a coach seat, flying back and forth to your district? Because you're losing enormous amounts of time going through security, sitting around in airports. You're going to be exhausted. And exhaustion means a low attention span. A low attention span means things are escaping your attention. And then you're going to go into a committee room and a committee hearing. By the way, where are you going to sleep when you're in Washington, D.C.? Are you going to sleep in your office? Because you might think $180,000 is a lot of money, but you have to now have two residences, one in Washington, D.C., and one in the Democrat state of Washington. Both are very expensive. I was just telling her, I was like preaching to her. I was like, are you aware of what you're about to face? You're going to go into a committee room with these cats from the administrative state, from the government, that have tenure. They cannot be fired besides some bureaucratic process, which we all know is a bunch of BS. And they're going to have plenty of time. They're getting plenty of sleep because their big house is right across the river. And, you know, they, they have a staff that can prepare these reports, and they are prepared to what they're going to say. And are you going to be able to tell that they're BSing you? How can you tell that? You have an enormous amount of work ahead of you, and you have 2 years, less than 2 years. As soon as you get elected, you have less than 2 years because you're already running for reelection. And they're not running for reelection. That's why it is the way it is. That's why it is the way it is. You have to think about why it is the way it is. So there's all these pressures, and you have to be fully on board and ready for that from the first second you're there. And I think she was kind of blown away because I don't think she had thought about any of that. And God bless her, but it's fine. I mean, we got to learn. Have to have people that care, and she does care. But my point is, you get in there and you care, and the place changes you. It changes you because you're exhausted. You can't help but be changed. It's just human nature, you know. If you're hungry,
Leadership is getting the right team. She just needs those people. She needs
sure,
someone who's got a gift to research, that would love to read a 100-page document and dissect it for her, that she trusts fully. I mean, it's just, she's got to get the right people around her.
totally. But how
Mm-hmm.
do you do that? How do you
Leaders,
practically, how do you do that though? Where do you
maybe
find these
someone
people?
wants to do it as a volunteer. I mean, there are people that care about this country that will say, I will take that small pittance pay that you're giving me, but I care so much about where we're headed that I'll do it to come alongside of you and learn and make a difference. So there are those rare, special individuals, perhaps, and that's who you're looking for. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
Well, I don't think that will be enough because, yeah, I just don't think that'll be enough. And I think, let me just throw a fact out at you there, Jill. Here's the question. I'm going to give you a question. Who sets the pay rate of congressional staffers?
I don't know.
That would be Congress.
Okay.
They're in charge of how much their staffers get paid. In other words, you don't need to hire volunteers. This is the federal government. This is not church. This is the biggest government, the most powerful government in the history of mankind. It should not be held accountable by volunteers.
No,
These
and
people should be paid well,
federal
and
volunteers, but
they
at
should
that,
not be living in tents. They should not be living in their offices. They should be paid well
I
for
agree with
this.
you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so how do we change that? But in the meantime,
There's
and
a
I don't,
culture and conservatives, there's a conservative culture that misses this very basic point, and that is why it is the way it is.
okay.
I
And
think
I
it's a
don't
cultural
mean
problem on our part.
that they're literal volunteers. I just
Yeah,
mean at
well,
a scale,
effectively, yeah.
you feel like a volunteer.
Sure.
I'm basically doing it as a volunteer at
Yeah.
that point, but you can still pick the right
Yeah,
people.
they have a lot of interns. Yeah.
Problem is what you're saying. The
Yeah,
bigger
they have
problem is
right.
we're not paying them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And it's important.
I've seen this. Let me give you an example on the Second Amendment activism. It's way different because it's local politics, but I've been a Second Amendment activist here in Orange County. I helped to found Orange County Gun Owners here, and we were all volunteers. And our opposition were not all volunteers. They were paid well. They were paid very well,
Mm.
and they had big money behind them. And the entire time, guess what they were saying? Guess what they were paid well to say? That we were just shills for the gun lobby. And the gun lobby and the gun industry is just this $1 trillion industry. It's like the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. And these mom and pop gun shops that are hanging on for dear life by their fingernails here in California because they're overregulated. And I mean, any business is overregulated here, and when you pile on it's a Second Amendment business, even more so, and not rightly. So people think, oh yeah, it should be, the gun law should be strengthened. The gun law should be strengthened. What do you mean by strengthen? If the law is stupid, it should not be strengthened. It should be taken away. But anyway, so we were constantly, it was like the most ironic thing in the world because we had no budget whatsoever and we were all volunteers and we're being told that we're just working for millionaires. It was actually the opposite. It was people like Bloomberg coming in with $25 million grants, and you know, people like people like that, big money people. We didn't have that kind of big money behind us. And I had the guy on the podcast. His name is Michael Schwartz, and he basically created a culture in San Diego where he created his own full-time job. He left banking and he convinced enough people in San Diego to give him a paycheck to pay him. And he was getting paid like $90,000. It's all public records there.
Mm-hmm.
So he left his banking job, his cush banking job with a major financial institution, and became a full-time advocate for the Second Amendment at the local level in San Diego. And that took enormous cultural change for Republicans to go, oh yeah, we actually need to support our values in a smart way. And we need people that are full-time, that are working on this even when I'm sleeping. And the only way you can do that is you can't do that with volunteers because it's just the nature of the thing. Volunteers they have to go away now because
Low
they can't physically do it. They're
that
not
with
reliable.
That's what you're saying.
They're
We're
not
talking
reliable. Yeah.
about Congress. We
Yeah,
can't do
yeah.
that with low paid staff.
Yeah. I think that's right.
What she's being asked to do
Right.
can't be done with low paid staff. So what do we do about that?
Yeah.
I guess that's the
I
question.
think we have to, in our circles of influence, we have to just cut right through it and say, you need, if these agencies that we're holding accountable have high budgets for their salaries, you need to start matching that so you can hold them accountable. Because otherwise you're not gonna trim down the bloated government. You just can't. Because realistically, how that happens is in committee meetings, committee hearings, and you have to be prepared for those. You need good staff. You have to have people that are paid well because you have to attract the right people. And it's okay to have to pay people to attract them. That's just human nature. These people want families, right? I mean, think about what we were saying about family.
Their
How
job
do
is
you how do you have the family strong if you don't have a roof over your head? You're just a
right.
volunteer. Dad's just a volunteer. Well, that's just not realistically going to happen, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I've been going off for a long time. I appreciate you just popping in there. Do you have anything to say about business or arts and entertainment? I bet you have a lot to say about that.
I do. Sure.
But do you feel comfortable saying it?
Business has changed with the internet. I
Yeah,
look at
right.
someone like Jocko Willink, who came out of Navy SEALs and now runs a business and is coaching multimillionaire leaders, some that I know
Oh, really?
that in his
Cool.
course.
Oh,
So yeah, he does training, extreme leadership. So that's part of the business sector. That's kind of underground. It's not a company like Apple or Amazon, but it's a countercultural business movement in how we're training up leaders. And I love
okay.
examples like that.
I'm not really familiar with him very much. I think I've listened to maybe a couple of his episodes, and
Hmm.
I know that he's the tank guy, right? You look at him and he looks like a human tank.
He does. And he wrote a book called Extreme Leadership, and he took examples from the field in battle, and he does comparisons to the business world. So he takes war analogies and then wraps it into the business sector and wrote a book about extreme ownership, which is leadership
Oh,
at its core. It's just owning any problem. If there's a problem, then as a leader, you own it. Find a solution.
hmm. So it's about taking responsibility, in other words.
Mm-hmm. If something goes wrong on the field, the leader will say, I didn't communicate with the men and women who were there well enough, or we made these decisions strategically, and this is what I would do different. Just owning it.
Hmm. Sounds like that has a lot to do with the government thing we were talking about just earlier.
It fits into any arena.
Can you imagine if government people did that?
That would be amazing.
Wow. Yeah, we have all these fires in California. You know what? That's our fault. We should have been managing those fires. We should have been managing that resource more carefully. We need to up the budget for that, for not for these for changing the gender of kindergartners, but we need to maybe funnel that money into protecting these mountain towns. Well, we're all over that now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that would be very interesting.
Definitely.
You mentioned coaching. Um, Coaching is an interesting business, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's kind of saturated? Because anybody can become a coach.
Sure. It probably is saturated, but the cream always rises to the top. So
Hmm.
those who have a voice, those who have the authority, those who are there and are actually bringing value, they will last.
I agree. What about arts and entertainment?
That's Hollywood. There are good films. I mentioned one earlier, 13 Hours.
Oh yeah.
Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. And I remember before that became known, I knew there was a whistleblower. We were praying for that person. I didn't know any details. I had no idea. I just remember we were praying for that. But then that movie came out, and I believe it had a great impact. That's using that mountain, that arena in a way that touches into other areas like government.
It was very powerful. Very
Mm-hmm.
powerful film. It's very difficult for me to watch.
Wow, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Me too, actually. Horrible.
Yeah. I appreciated that they were, I wish they were a little bit more just clear about who was to blame, but that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
They did pretty good work, I think. Now
Mm-hmm.
you said you were praying. You're a Muslim? Are you, how
I'm
long have you been
Christian.
oh, you're a Christian. Okay, hold on a second. So how long have you been a Christian?
Oh gosh, since 1989.
1989. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What's your, you want to talk about that? Do you feel comfortable talking about that?
If you'd like to, we can.
How did you become a Christian? What is it about Christianity that seems legit to you?
I would have called myself an atheist prior to, and it's funny, I'm dating myself because I gave you a date, but it doesn't matter because I am timeless. But I would have considered myself to be an atheist. I wasn't looking for God, but my mom was attending the church I mentioned earlier in South Barrington, Illinois, and she invited me to go with her, and I said, I'll go. And I'll tell you, because it was presented, it seemed like I was going to a business campus. Everything was so professional, and everything was done with such a standard of excellence. And so even the speaker, because I am a public speaker, that was my major in college. It was Bill Hybels who was giving the message, and I was just impressed with his speaking ability. But I was looking at it more as a skeptic. Like, look at this guy. He is such a good public speaker that he has these people eating out of the palm of his hand. And I was just kind of analyzing, like, they're just listening and believing every word he says. And then at some point in this discussion, this presentation is how I viewed it, he was preaching, but I just thought he's giving this presentation. He's very professional. Something inside of me started asking questions like, how do I become a Christian? Because he said something like, he said, I would bet the farm on this. This is what I've staked my life on, and I would bet the farm on this. And I thought, wow, this is real. I mean, what he's saying is coming from a deep place of conviction and belief. And something in me started asking the question, how do I become a Christian? And as soon
Wow.
as I thought it, I was just thinking it, he said something like he was reading my mind. He said, someone might be sitting here asking the question, how do I become a Christian? He
Wow.
literally said it right after I thought it. And then he just spelled out what to do and led everyone through a prayer to understand who Jesus was. And that, I won't go into all of it. I'm not here to preach the gospel, but I will tell you that I heard that message and I walked out, and I am an intense individual. So I'm all in or not at all. I don't do anything halfway or I'm on the fence. So I just said, that's it. My whole life is changing. Everything changed at that moment for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
All from that one presentation by
Yeah.
Bill Hybels.
Yes. Yes.
So did you go to church the very next Sunday, or what
I did.
practically
I went
happened?
to church, and I was in sales at the time. I was selling, working a full-time job, but then I got into ministry. I was leading in that church in the single adults ministry. I was young, just out of college, so I started leading um, a group of about 200 people. I was co-leading it with someone, and um, that was how it all began.
Did you read the Bible at all before that?
No,
Did
I
that
grew
change? Did you start reading the Bible?
I grew up in a Christian home, but it was like Chinese to me. It didn't make any sense. It never connected.
Really? Were you a rebellious kid then?
No, I wasn't a rebellious kid. It's just didn't
You
seem
just
relevant.
you were raised in church?
Well, I was raised in church, but it wasn't that. It was a Methodist church, and it didn't feel alive to me.
Hmm.
I don't.
Had you never heard the gospel up until Hybels said it?
I believe that was the first time that really made sense to me.
So you'd heard it before, but you didn't it didn't hit you.
Exactly.
So would you say it was the way Hybels said it that hit you in a certain way, or so Hybels gets the credit, or what? How would you say it?
Get the credit. It was maybe that was he has a gift of evangelism, and
Okay,
that was a
so
gifted evangelism, bringing a message using his gift, and
so
it landed.
he's a silver-tongued speaker.
But that's not what it was, because
Okay.
I saw that. Yes, he was, but that's not what happened.
Yeah. Well, it's
A mess.
amazing. This story is amazing because you said you're a public speaker.
Yes.
Um, so as an insider on that whole thing, that gig, you can obviously spot talent, but you know talent when you see it, and you also know the preparation that goes into it, which is
Sure.
quite significant.
Mm.
But you know that these are just tricks of the trade, though. So there was something else about Bill besides just his being able to speak well, right?
Absolutely. And it was. I know what it was. Would
Hmm.
you like me to clarify what that was? I mean, it was
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
Holy Spirit of God
Whoa.
moving inside of me,
Oh,
stirring me to ask questions, and
oh,
anointing Bill to bring a message that landed with me and probably a lot of other people that were sitting there that day.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was it about that? How do you know it was the Holy Spirit? Like, I'm not, I really am not, I believe you. I'm just wondering, can you give me something to hang on to? Like,
Because I
what was
had
it?
zero intention. I mean, I would have called myself an atheist. I literally went in not asking the question of who is God. It's not about persuasive public speaking. I've done persuasive public speaking. I know when it's a persuasive public speech. That's
Hmm.
not what it was.
Hmm.
It was something different.
Okay.
And you discern the difference. And I know
Hmm.
it wasn't somebody that was eloquent.
Hmm. There was something inside of you stirring.
That was bigger than that.
What was happening inside of you?
Well, just those questions of, wow, this is it. This is what I want.
Like a light turning on?
Pardon me?
Was
Yes,
it like a light turning on?
exactly.
Wow. What was it that you wanted?
I wanted my life to have purpose and I wanted to make a difference.
Hmm. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Any regrets?
Not at all. I'm so grateful.
Wow. You want to share any highlights from that time, from since that time?
Well, it changed my entire life. And so when things happen like we're facing right now with society needing intervention, needing to be transformed, these mountains, I can walk with courage and faith, knowing that there's something going on behind the scenes that I don't know anything about, that's bigger than me. And I can partner with that, but I don't even have to have all of the answers. So it
Hmm.
allows me to have confidence when other people wouldn't have it. And it's not because I have confidence in my own abilities, it's because there's something bigger than me and I'm just part of it. So I don't have to figure it all out.
Don't you have to figure out how to tap into that thing though? Like, I
Yes.
mean,
That's a lifelong journey. That's what I've been doing for decades. That's what I've been doing.
yeah,
So I can
do you have,
be in this time in history and walk forward with a company of people who make a difference without fear of what we're seeing, I would call it, in the natural realm. There's something bigger going on.
yeah. So there's no fear. So, but don't you have any fear that you won't tap into it? The power that you're talking about? It sounds like Star Wars right now.
That I
We
wouldn't.
might want to be more specific about what power we're talking about.
Okay. What we're talking about is the kingdom of heaven and bringing that to earth. We're the plans of God and what he wants to see happen on the earth. We're tapping into the heart of God for this nation, for our lives, for our day-to-day conversations.
Hmm.
And if I even had to rely on myself, then it's about me. Even that, I can totally rely on him. I'm not going to miss it because I'm positioned to hear him and partner with him. God. Can I say that word?
Which
That's
one?
okay. Okay.
Which word?
No, it's
Oh, okay.
the G word.
God. Oh yeah, of course. Say whatever you want to say.
Okay.
Besides the other stuff, the
Words.
EF stuff. Just because of YouTube is such an idiot.
You can't talk about that. Nuh-uh, that's misinformation. We don't want anybody to hear about that perspective over there. And you're harming people. So we're not going to let you talk about it. Hey, listen, man, I'm a billion-dollar company, man. I can shut you up anytime, but oh yeah, we'd love to hear you talk about that other stuff over there. Yeah, sure.
Anyway, sorry. That's just me. Very little sleep. I get very silly. So, what you're saying about the kingdom of heaven, I'm going to channel my inner Democrat here.
Okay.
Basically, you want a theocracy, Jill. You want God to be president. You want God to be on the Supreme Court, and you want God to be every Congress people. And
Well, I never said that. But yeah,
ah, okay,
I certainly hope that well, I never said that.
okay. You never said it, but that's what you meant, right?
I would love to see people who partner with God
Okay,
in key positions of influence on every mountain. Yes.
okay.
And everyone else can believe whatever they want to believe, but absolutely, I want to be represented on every mountain. My beliefs, my values. Yes.
And the reason is because you want power.
No, the reason is because I want the right people in positions of leadership, in positions of influence that represent me.
Okay.
They can bring their own people in too, but I want to be represented.
Okay.
I want my values represented.
Do you feel like they're represented now?
Well, what are we
In
talking about?
yeah. Well, I
Not
mean, is this a present reality is what I'm asking, or is this a future? Is this a present reality you're experiencing, or and you're having a great time, or is this a future hope for you?
No, this is a current battle. This is
It's a current battle.
it's
Okay.
a current battle.
Where's this battle take place? How's this battle go? How do you fight this battle?
Well, again, and for me, it's just easy to look at the different spheres of influence and break it down that way. We can look at academia,
Mm-hmm.
or media, or arts and entertainment.
Right. I mean, if it's a battle, you have to fight. So what's how do you train for this? How do you fight it? How do you recruit people?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a real question. I'm really wondering. Like
Well,
these Democrats are going to be freaking out right now. They're wondering, "Oh, you want to fight us?" Oh, okay. Want to fight us because they think they own these mountains.
they do own these mountains. They don't own these
Well,
mountains.
then they're going to fight you for it.
They have they have had influence on these mountains to an exorbitant extent that somehow we have allowed, if we're going to talk about extreme ownership, we've allowed it. We've been asleep. We
Sure.
let it happen. We didn't realize. I don't know
Yeah.
how long it's been going on, but it seems to have been going on for quite some time because they're pretty entrenched.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now that's the battle.
So the
That's
battle is with ourselves.
well, the battle is
I
I'm
mean, if
fully
we've allowed it, then clearly the battle is with us, ourselves.
that is right. And so, but
So
I
this
believe
is a self-critical
it
thing.
in the last 4 years. I believe about 4 years ago, which is about when I got connected to you and some of the messages that you bring. It was through Lance Walnut. I was listening to him prior to
I know that
T,
guy.
and he was talking so much about that. And you were a voice he mentioned in the world of academia. But just in listening to him, I believe at that point in time, people started being aware of how much ground we had lost and probably didn't even know it. But we saw it because of what was coming out in the media. And we looked at arts and entertainment and how much ground we had lost. But I believe we're getting more organized. We're getting better. We're doing something about it in whatever way we can.
Hmm. Yeah. So what specifically do you see yourself doing and contributing to this? This or I mean, take it a different direction, um, if you want.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I can talk a little bit about my own experience here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I
Education.
would say, for me,
Mhm.
it's prayer and communication. It's also networking, it's connections, it's influencing others as well. So it's for me personally, it would
Yeah.
be 3-part strategy: prayer, my own communication, and my own sphere of networking and partnering with others in this.
Yeah. Well, I was dug in higher education in Los Angeles for a long time, surrounded by Democrats and pagans, basically. It's fine. It's fine. That's the way it is. I call it Los Angeles. By the way, I've never been corrected when I say that. No one ever corrects me. Even the Democrats don't correct me. It's like
Wow.
they know this is a totally lost place.
Mm-hmm.
So
At
when I
least,
say it, they don't. In fact, yeah, I just what I've seen in higher ed is the, we can criticize the Democrats a lot, but also I've seen quite a bit to criticize from the Republicans because um, like you said, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we've allowed for a long time and stuff that's just normal. We've considered it normal. I see a lot of parents sending their kids to college and just it's just odd to me to that something that is so satanic and destructive would be funded
mm,
by people that consider themselves to have principles and values that are totally the opposite. It would be kind of like to use an example that maybe a lot more people would recognize. It would be like if if you were you knew your kids needed to go to a youth group in church, and so you think, that church will do. Just any old church will do. So you drive by the local pagan temple and just drop your kids off once a week to be in that youth group. But it's actually worse than that. Now, I don't know any parents that would do that.
no.
Which is my point, is a fortiori, it's even worse when you drop them off for 4 years every day and
Mm,
you fund it. You fund it. That's what you're doing. And you don't have any problem with that. I mean, I really do believe that as bad as everything that Donald Trump has ever done, and he's done some bad things, and I hope that eventually he sees and he comes to repentance. I don't know if he has, but I voted for him. Hey, I did. I vote for him. It doesn't mean I'm not going to vote because he was better than the alternative, I think. But there's a lot of things I like about him. But, you know, there are probably worse things happening on your local college campus in one semester than happening than the entire presidency of Donald Trump. And look at what people get upset about. It's just so bizarre to me that you would think that an institution that is entirely run by Democrats to the exclusion of Republicans with hostility like that would be a healthy thing for America. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. People just go along with it. Go along with the great inflation. Go along with the entitlement, and Republican parents too. Because when Johnny comes home with a report card that says all A's, the average parent says, I'm so proud of Johnny. Look at Johnny. Look at Johnny.
mhm,
Look at what he did. It's not the Republican parent needs to be doing this. How many of those are inflated grades? And I'm actually kind of hacked off now
mhm,
because you're not getting your butt kicked like it should be. And
mhm.
you're not learning what you should learn, and which includes character and work ethic.
Right.
Jill, I'm teaching seniors that don't know how to do footnotes.
Mm,
They're seniors in college. These are the next jurors. If you get arrested falsely accused of a crime, they're your jurors.
wow.
And
Sobering
and
thought.
pr- and they're probably trying to get out of jury duty, which is another thing. People don't want to do jury duty. These are the people that we have around us. They don't even they're angry at the criminal justice system, and the same person will try to get out of jury duty. The same exact person. So I don't want to just keep going off like this, Jill, but I've seen a lot of problems, and I think that there's a lot of people trying to correct those problems, and there's a lot of good Democrats too, by the way, on that are for rigorous higher education. I wish they were louder than they are, but they're not. Oftentimes, they're just kind of putting their head down.
Mm,
And you know, I had some good working relationships with a lot of Dems, and I was really disappointed to see what I saw on with some Republicans. Um, but anyway, that's just one. I have a pretty large sample to draw from because my experience is so extensive on the campuses. I have you know a decade and a half on 12 campuses, and the sample size is two big state universities, five community colleges, which are government schools. So that's what, seven government colleges. Over half are government colleges. And then I have the rest are private colleges, from so-called liberal to so-called conservative, any spectrum. Cal Lutheran, Pepperdine University in Malibu, um, Loyola Marymount, which is in West Los Angeles. That's a swanky area of Los Angeles, and Biola and Azusa Pacific. So I've been around. I see a lot. I've seen a lot, and there's things that are strengths and weaknesses of all of those schools. But oftentimes the weaknesses are not zeroed in on for improvement.
mm.
That's what I've noticed. And I don't know if everybody's too busy or what, but that's just what I'm only going off on this because you said education is one of those mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And I see weaknesses that are not focused on for improvement. I'm not
And
sure
Matt,
why.
who makes the decision in terms of where the energy goes, how a problem is solved, where the financing goes to solve those problems? Is it a committee? Is it one individual? In a university, for example, how to solve that problem? Is
Right.
there a one decision maker, or how does that work?
I think it would depend on what the problem is. But for problems like what we're talking about, um, it would not be just one person. It would have to be a change in culture, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Yeah. Take, for example, grade inflation. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe one person could make a difference, but it would be kind of like Donald Trump becoming president and thinking he can change everything just as president, which he can't do. You Because he would have so much opposition from his own employees that it would be so. Okay, for grade inflation, for example, there's this movement on campus which is all the rage now, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
The initials are DIE, die, as Jordan
That's
Peterson pointed
true.
out. The diversity, and the concern is that, I guess the concern is that the higher education needs to be diverse, needs to be equitable, and needs to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's front and center on your radar, in your job applicants and stuff like that, what that's doing is taking attention off of grade inflation as a problem, for example. Basically, what you're saying is grade inflation is not a problem because grade inflation is inclusive. And it's certainly not, it depends on what you mean by equitable, but it's certainly not just. And, but I don't think that people mean equity by equity. I don't think they mean justice. I think they mean something else. And maybe they don't know what they mean. And diversity. So you got to think about what the purpose of higher education is. Is it to create excellent people, people that have high academic standards, meaning no BS. You don't BS your way through. That doesn't cut it. You give credit for the sources you use, no cheating. You take good notes in class. You're not on social media. You're not just trying to fit in and be popular. And right now, diversity is popular. That's popular. It's like rolling up your jeans in seventh grade. It does nothing to help you be a more excellent adult at all. You as an individual, I'm saying. And I think that this should be the goal for each student, no matter what you are, as far as your background and your what people call identity, which I don't like to use that word identity because I don't think it means that. Or maybe your background, your values, your culture, what you look like, or something like that, maybe. But if you take, for example, you have a vice president for equity, inclusion, and diversity, or diversity, inclusion, and equity, DIE. You might have a six-figure bureaucrat that's a vice president or a dean or something like that. But you have no vice president for combating grade inflation. No academic vice president that is there to enforce high academic standards for students and to make sure that professors who do that are protected. You don't have that. And so if you have that kind of a structure, what you're basically incentivizing is bullshit and grade inflation, because the bullshitters will squirt through. They'll be on juries, and next thing you know, innocent people are being convicted, or guilty people are being left free, or there's injustice in civil cases. And that's just one example. I mean, you have people that can't even do footnotes, for crying out loud. They can't even take notes. They don't even know how to take notes. They don't do the reading. And they're distracted and they have low attention spans. And that is a disaster for a culture like ours, where decisions are made quickly and more and more quickly. The delay that we used to have because of a low communication technology, the delay we used to have allowed for more reflection and deliberation that made sure that reason kind of took over eventually, where passion fizzles out. Now we just have passion. People, if they have high attention span, are there they have a high attention span because they're in fight or flight and they have a lot of passion. And then they move on to something else. But the kind of problems that we have that are facing our culture right now, problems of energy, for example, problems of international war, conflict, possible terrorism. You have technology that is more invasive than ever. Who's policing that? You have commercially available drones that can be weaponized. You have the kind of surveillance technology that has never been seen in history before. Who's paying attention to that?
Right.
You have, you know, you have, and we're not teaching logic. And
You're
you,
teaching logic.
well,
You
yeah,
know,
but it's not required. Not even Christian colleges are requiring it. Why? Why is this? If I was a parent sending my kid, the first thing I would ask is, why are you not teaching logic?
right.
Explain that to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
So that,
I don't want a tour of the gymnasium. I don't want a tour of the damn gymnasium. Do not show me the gymnasium. Show me the library. I want to see how many people are in the library.
right.
And I want to see what they're doing. I want to peer over their shoulders. Are they on social media? I want to, why are you not requiring logic? Show me what you're doing to combat grade inflation. If parents did that, we wouldn't have the culture that we have, but parents do not do that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And money talks. Where is the money coming from? From the parents who are sending their children to school. If they choose, what are the options? What are the schools that are there? Are there schools that teach logic? Are there schools that are not grade inflated? I would find
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
2 out of 100, then let's send our kids there.
Yeah.
They get the money. Money talks. So we pull the money. We pull the children out of those schools and get them into the schools that are providing.
I think that's a good start. Yeah,
that's a good start. Just be aware. Do you want to give your money to a school that's grade inflated and they're not learning not only how to think, but they don't even know what thinking is?
Yeah. That's very well said. That's very well said. Yeah, they don't know what thinking is. That's great. I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna write that down and take credit for it. No, just kidding. I'll give you credit for it. They don't know what thinking is. Well, there's a structural issue though. Is those colleges that are the best, I think they take the fewest resources from the government, which means everybody else has an advantage from money standpoint. So even if the parents, well, I mean, definitely a great start, because if the parents are funneling their kids to these good schools, then that takes money away from the bad schools, to at least some money. But these bad schools are still getting government aid. They're being propped up by tax money that everybody pays for. And
But
that's just unfair.
Just people with money, people with resources that make a decision to say, I'm going to fund this school. I'm going to donate to this school, this one school in this entire state that isn't grade inflated and teaches kids not only how to think, but what thinking is. This is the school I want. So
yeah, I agree.
Money.
So then how do you get the money though? Like, say you want to be one of those persons that gives big money. How do you get the money? How do you get that?
Well, we put the word out. These are the schools. If you want to donate to a school, if you have a passion for the next emerging generation that's being taught and you want to donate, these are the 3 schools in the whole USA. I don't know, maybe there's more that would actually qualify. I don't know how many there are.
I don't know either.
Slated. Or you just, here are the professors, take these classes because they're in this environment, but these professors, they're not grade inflated. So if you learned from him or her, then you've got some credibility on your resume.
Yeah. What I was asking though is, how do you get to be the person that gives the money? How do you get to be one of those people?
To create wealth. If you want to be the person that gives the money, then we need to learn how to create wealth. Because it's needed. Yes, finances will be needed to transform mountains.
Is that kind of is that the first step, is how do we create wealth?
I think that's a great place to start.
So where do we start with that? How do we do that?
We identified a problem and resources are needed to solve that problem. There are people that have the resources, and if we have a passion for something and don't have the resources, then we need to learn how to create wealth.
Do you have any ideas of how to do that?
I believe that there are, that's a whole nother topic that I would be delighted to spend some time thinking about, but absolutely, yes.
Because otherwise it's just finding rich people and asking them for money,
Right.
which,
So we learn how to create wealth. We learn how to multiply.
all right. Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
This was great, Lucas.
I had fun time
wonderful.
hanging out with you, Jill.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me here.
Last chance. Anything else you want to share? You want me to link anything?
Nothing to link.
Okay, you can send it to me if you
Just let
change
know.
your mind.
For sure I will.
Send me an email. All right. Thanks for being with us, Jill.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, Lucas.